Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel, and due to popular request, I decided to do a video on how to analyze poetry with my friend and fellow literature classmate, Nutsa.
Hello.
Let's just get started. So in the video, we're gonna first explain like the different aspects of things that we look at in a poem, such as like imagery, language, stuff like that. And then we're gonna move on to when we read a new poem, how we're gonna approach it and the steps that we take.
Okay, so the method that our teachers taught us is called the STILF method, and it basically breaks down the poem into 5 aspects or areas. And STILF stands for subject, tone, imagery, language, and form. So we're going to analyze what each aspect include.
So the subject of the poem is quite straightforward. It is just the theme of the poem. Like, since a poem is a literary work and it often conveys a message. And so you can look at the central ideas and the subject matters as they often reveal the underlying theme of a poem. You can also mention it, like when you're writing an essay, you can mention it in the introductory or the thesis statement of your essay to show your understanding of the poem. And to know, like if you're able to know the subject of the poem, obviously will help you to understand the content better as well.
Okay, next is tone for T. Tone is basically the atmosphere that the author is trying to create in the reader and throughout the whole poem. So there's 2 aspects of this. One is the speaker. First, we need to define if it's a male or female, or if it's not specified, or if the tone of the poem is very formal or informal, or what kind of emotions does it evoke in the reader. And basically, message kind of goes with the tone, because if the message is something positive and encouraging, the tone will be a little bit more uplifting, but the tone can also be very melancholic, very deep, very, very pensive.
Yeah, and so next up is imagery, and it is how the poet uses like a various of literary techniques to create imagery and like that are often quite striking to the reader. For example, like personification, simile, or pathetic fallacy, or metaphor, like simple as that. So imagery and language kind of goes together, and that's what we're gonna talk about next.
Next part is language, which goes hand in hand with imagery. Language is basically how the author conveys her or his message. It's basically what kind of diction they use, kind of like the semantic fields in the poem, the ongoing themes in the poem, if they use some literary devices like similes, metaphors, enjambment, personification. And you can, as the reader, you can also analyze and comment the way they convey the message and the literary devices they use, and also the effect on the reader and what kind of emotions they evoke as well.
And the last one, but not least, is form. So here we're referring to the poetic form and the structure of the poem. So for the poetic form, it can be about the meter, the rhyme scheme, the rhythm of the poem, and
the syllabic structure.
Yeah, syllabic structure, how they create tension or like pace, affect the pace of the poem. Yeah, as for structure, we often look at the stanzas and how they break, or like if there's an enjambment that's like run on lines, or what was I gonna say? Caesura, like a pause in the middle of a line.
Yeah.
So there's like different things that you can talk about, and all of these create different mood or atmosphere. Like for example, if there's like a Caesura, you might create a dramatic pause in the line, and maybe that's something the poet wants to emphasize. For example, in the poem Wild Night by Emily Dickinson, the very first line of the poem is wild nights. Well, all her poems is like that. Yeah. So wild nights, but with a hyphen, with a dash in between the 2 words, and that elongates the theatrical opening, and then connotes intensity, presents her feelings, the speaker's feelings, and emotions very directly within the first line, and it also ends on a exclamation mark. Punctuation is also something that's quite important
Yes.
to look at.
You can look at many things in structure and form. Stanzas in between lines, maybe like voltas where there's like a breakage, or maybe the message is split into like 2 or 3 parts throughout the poem. We can analyze that. Basically, it's a very personal, subjective experience.
Yeah. All right. So then let's talk about the specific steps that we follow, or roughly follow, when we look at a new poem. Okay, step 1, you read the poem. And mostly, like for the first time, you just read it silently. Okay, let's read the poem Wild Nights.
Let's read it.
Step 2 is to read it out loud. This time, reading it out loud, you should focus on the sound it makes, like rhythmic patterns, the rhymes, and how the line breaks affect the pacing of the poem. Wild nights, wild nights. Were I with thee, wild nights should be our luxury.
Futile with the winds to a heart in port, done with the compass, done with the chart.
Roaring in Eden, the sea, might I moor tonight in thee. For example, I notice here like there is an enjambment between line 3 and line 4, and that creates a feeling of panting as it speeds up the lines.
Also focus on which words are stressed and not stressed. And you can also, with Emily Dickinson in particular, capitalization of which nouns, which adjectives, it makes a big difference on how you view the poem.
Yeah. So after reading it 2 times or 3 times, if you will, you can map out the rhyme scheme. For this poem specifically, it doesn't have a regular rhyme scheme, and that's normal. Not all poems follow a rhyme pattern. So it has irregular rhymes with stanza 1 ABB, stanza 2 CD ED, stanza 3 FB AB, I guess. Yeah. Okay, next step,
So first thing is to figure out what the poem is about and what the speaker or the author is trying to say and what its message is that they want to convey to the reader. So in this case, Wild Nights, Wild Nights, it presents a very passionate love as something paradoxical. So it focuses on the physical aspects of love, desire, sexual passion.
Like how the storm is both wild but comforting, adventurous but secure. So then we go to line by line analysis and just go through the poem one by one. And then we go back to the STILF we mentioned earlier, like look at the imagery, tone, language, form. Yeah.
We usually leave form last because we think that figuring out the subject clearly of the poem, even though it may be ambiguous at sometimes, it helps you to see why the language and why the certain tone is used and why the speaker or the author has used this specific literary devices, or for example like the certain form, irregular or regular. Make sure you figure out the subject and the message, and then it will be easier to analyze each writing method.
Yeah, and for the tone of the poem, it's also good to think about the speaker's perspective and like based on the poet's past experience and stuff like that. So in that case, you should learn about the context of the poem. So who the poet is, when, where they were born, and because different time period have all different like social, economic context, background. And also when the poem was written, because we've done like lots of war poems, and it's like all around written during the Second World War or like First World War, and that feeling, like it's not something I think we can write about like in modern time.
Very authentic to that time period.
Yeah. Oh, also with the language, semantic field is very important. Semantic field defines semantic field. If a certain group of words, that is like the nouns, adjectives, verbs, all shared the same, like similar theme, such as like semantic fields of love,
death,
yeah.
nature. All that.
You can analyze the use of that. For example, here it has a semantic field of boats, sailors, and navigations, such as like port, compass, chart, the sea. So the image of the navigation devices suggests a feeling that the speaker is desperately searching for her absent love and is ready to be finished searching with the compass that she uses. The sea also becomes a metaphor of her love, her passion.
Also look out for hidden religious imagery in the poem, because Emily Dickinson likes to use lots of metaphors to kind of crack her own psyche and bring out her own inner feelings in the poem, and it is really important to see what the metaphor is leading to and what it is linked to, because maybe it can be something about her past or some religious imagery. Like in here you can see rowing in Eden, that definitely has some religious imagery, and linked to heaven, linked to hope, linked to salvation.
Yeah. And also, it obviously would be quite helpful if you read other people's analysis. Don't just go for like lit charts, but we always go for it.
We always go for it. Lit charts is a good place to start.
Yeah, it's a good place to start.
Yes.
But try to find some like research paper or some like critics that have their opinions on this poem, and from there you can develop your own ideas. Yeah.
And also exchange ideas with your friends, because your friends, you guys may have completely opposite interpretations.
Yeah.
When you bring them together, you might have a very
brand
nice
new.
You may open up new doors, new interpretations.
And you combine it together, it's like more complex, more developed arguments. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah.
Hope you find this video useful. Until next time, goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you for watching.